Welcome to Intimacy Evolution, the podcast that helps you enjoy deeper connection and more intimacy in your relationships. I'm Brianna Carey, relationship and intimacy coach, and together with my husband Mark, a licensed professional counselor, we're here to help couples create the relationships they crave. Relationships evolve over time, and that's okay. Let's talk about it. Today, we have a special guest with us that I am very excited for you all to hear from. We connected. She slid into my DMs, and we had a mutual friend, Hannah Deindorfer, who we had on this podcast before. And I just really love her energy right off the bat. She also has her own podcast. So Jordan Gomez, Jago, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to dive into all of the things with you. We just recorded a podcast for your show, Confidently Uncomfortable. And I can't wait for that to come out.
You crushed it. It was so good.
Thank you. And I really love the flow of this conversation and how we have a lot of overlap. And so I would just love to delve right in. I know that you have a fitness background. You also do coaching and women's work too. So please give everybody a rundown of who you are.
Absolutely. Let's see. Who am I? Such a loaded question. But as far as starting and where this kind of passion came from with what I do now to help women is I went to school at UNC Chapel Hill and I was doing like the exercise sports science route of things. And while I was there, I started teaching group fitness. And the impact I was able to have when people would come out of class and be like, I feel so strong. I feel so good in my skin. It felt amazing, like probably ego focused, but it felt so good to be able to have that direct impact on people that were coming into class. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to do this and help people. And so the next route was doing the personal training thing. I was in the gym from 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. And that was how I thought I was going to make the biggest impact. But it's so funny, like how with personal trainers and if you're a hairdresser out there, like people start to really open up to you and share what's really going on in their lives. And I started to realize that like I wanted to have a bigger impact on my clients more so than just the 45 minutes to an hour in the gym. And that it was so much more than just the external changes that I was trying to help them with. There's so much going on with them mentally, and I wanted to help empower them and then feel confident in their skin. And so I thought, okay, how can I do this? And I started to do more of the online coaching thing and kind of combining the two of like, being a health coach, but also having this confidence component that helps them with their mindset shifts, because so much of what I think holds us back is our mindset and not thinking we're good enough or putting ourselves down or society telling us who we feel like we should be when really we're meant to just fully embody who we are and embrace ourselves unapologetically. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because I personally struggled with it so much, even when I was helping these people. So as a group fitness instructor, I'm helping people feel good when they would leave class, but I'm comparing myself to all the other fitness instructors who are more petite than me or just look different than me. And, I always saw myself as the bigger girl. And society was teaching me that was not okay. You need to be that socially acceptable size and then you'll be good enough. And so it kept me from showing up fully for years because I thought, I can't fully do this online coaching thing until I look the part as a fitness coach. I can't do this until, all of those things. And all of those reasons were bullshit because we're all human going through this experience. And so we're constantly changing and evolving. And so you can't just wait until you feel ready. And so I stopped getting in my own way. I started to show up for these women and it changed my life because I started to realize like, hey, when I start, just doing these things to get uncomfortable and grow in my confidence, I do feel more confident. Like maybe when I started this journey with online coaching business, like I didn't feel really confident. Maybe when I started this podcast, people told me like, who's going to listen? Who's going to listen to that? It's totally oversaturated. If someone tells you your market's oversaturated, they're probably not the one succeeding in the market. So don't listen to them. But I just stopped listening to all the noise around me and started to really lean into what I was passionate about. And that was helping women feel comfortable and confident in their skin and recognize how truly powerful we are and how not only is it important to step into ourselves and our authenticity, but like, you're going to feel so much better in life when you show up unapologetically as yourself. And it's something I've started to do. And it's really scary, but the more that I do it, the more that I realize I want everyone to feel this kind of freedom and joy and strength and confidence. So that's really where it all comes from.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to begin because I love literally everything about that so much. And I know we're going to break this into chunks and delve more into a lot of this. One thing I want to comment on real quick is how you talked about the confidence and how it's very scary. But I can't remember if this is a phrase I heard, if it's just coming to me, but like basically, like you have to practice having confidence. Like the more you practice it, then you're going to have confidence. You're not going to have confidence right off the bat. You have to practice
Exactly.
it. And so I love that you shared that. Oh, going beyond the external, making a bigger impact. I resonate so much with
Mm,
that because that's kind of how I started in my journey too, is I was working with women, but then I'm like, there's so much more to this. Like we need to work with the whole couple. So I just love that. And I cannot wait for you to talk more about how you helped women with their mindset shifts.
mm.
I know you talked about it, that you wanted to make a bigger impact, but like, how does that look? What is your process? And what did you notice with the clients you were working with?
Yeah. So I would get on these discovery calls with clients, and whenever they would talk to me about their goals or their dreams, a lot of them really struggled to picture like what their vision of their most confident self was. I would be like, okay, like close your eyes with me. Yes, I would make them close their eyes on the phone. Close your
Mhm.
eyes with me. When you think of your most confident self, like what are they doing? What do they look like? How do they feel? What are they saying yes to? And a lot of times they were struggling with that. We talked about this on my podcast, like feeling like there wasn't any passion. They were kind of just checking off boxes throughout their life. And so it made it really hard to step into that because you were constantly feeling like, okay, well, I'm doing all the things that I feel like I'm supposed to do. Like I went to school, I got a degree, I got a job, I got married, got a house, kids, all the things, right? And they get to this point and they're like, I don't know who I am. Like I've done all the things that society has told me I should do. I've felt bad about my body my entire life because I feel like that's what I should be doing. I feel like I should constantly need to lose weight because that's what I'm constantly told and pressured into.
Mhm.
And I help them break up with shoulding themselves. So with
Yes.
constantly saying like, I should be doing this. And there's just so much guilt. I think it's on both sides, but definitely like as a woman, it's like we're feeling that guilt of like, "Ugh, I'm not doing enough or I'm being too much or I shouldn't have spoken up about that or just constant like self judgment and feeling judgment from others around us. And so my process is getting them to break up with the shoulds. And so they start telling me their
Mhm.
goals and they'll be like, well, I want to lose weight. I want to be healthier. And first of all, they're very general goals, right? And so I'm like, I need you to visually see your goals. I'm not anti weight loss, but I want it to be that there's a why behind it. Like maybe
Yeah.
it's really not that you want to lose weight, but that you want to feel confident in your skin. And maybe it's that you want to start, wearing certain things that you were told you couldn't or shouldn't wear. And all of
Mm.
those things come from like breaking up with what society has told us or expected from us and starting to step into who we truly are. And so it takes a lot more of releasing things and breaking up with stuff than it does even adding on all this new stuff when it comes to me working with my clients at first.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. So a phrase that came to mind, I don't know if you've heard this one, is a should is a could covered in shame. And so should, no, it's not should. Like what are you actually trying to say? And so
Mm,
I love that you go beyond that and help them really identify what is it they truly want. And I think for a lot of women this is so challenging because we're not taught that we're allowed to have a say in our life,
mhm.
really. Like, like you said, we just go through, check the boxes, do the things. And I feel like comparison is so much more prevalent for women than it
Mhm.
is for men. And um, that's what I've experienced. That's what
Yeah.
I observe. And so is that what you notice as
Yeah.
well? Is it
It's almost what we're told because it's like we were allowed such little space for so many years. I mean, we think about our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, like we weren't allowed a voice. And now that we are, it's like, well, you should be happy with the little seat at the table we did give you, or the view that we gave you. And really, that idea of like, well, you should just like shut up and sit because
Yeah.
you're so lucky to even be here at this point. And
Yeah.
so the idea of like not everyone can be on top, and we're taught from a very young age that like there's this competition side around women, and that's how we're supposed to do, whereas men are taught that like you can be whatever you want to be, and
Yeah.
they're not really worried about that. Like their idea of competition is more around sports, and that's not even necessarily the same level of competition. We are feeling that with every single thing that we do, and it's so weird because it's like we've almost been trained to hate on other women, like
Mhm.
there's something that comes up a lot with my clients, and I always say to go into your thoughts with like a level of grace and just seeing it as more of an observer, because
Mhm.
they've shared with me, like, I'm very judgmental, Jago. Like, as soon as I'm seeing someone, I'm over here in crop tops and my boobs are out and everything like that. And, I have a lot of clients who are a little more reserved. And I tell people everyone's confidence looks different for everyone, and that's
Mm.
okay. But they still feel they're like, well, when I see someone showing up in this way or dressing this way, like the immediate judgment comes up and they start to question it. And that's all I care about is like start to question it and be like, where is that coming from? Usually it's coming from the societal pressures of like, no, you're supposed to judge them because we're going to put labels on women, and that's what we're going to do because we want to box these women in.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna go into that a little bit more. I know it's a little bit off of what we're talking about, but just the
I tend to
fact
do that.
that just the fact that, like, men compare, and that's so the competition is healthy. It's
Yeah.
expected. They can compare, and when what they see is they're like, "Oh, I can have that too. I see them
Mm,
having something, I can also have that." Whereas women, it more tends to go to, "Oh, they have that. How did they get that? What did they do to get that? I could never." Or
I
there's
could
these
never.
stories,
Hmm.
and we don't believe that we can also have what they have. Like, it's not a competition that only one person gets it. We can all have the things. And
Yeah.
the other thing is pitting women against each other, because women are really fucking powerful.
Mm,
But if we are constantly breaking each other down, we don't realize the power that we actually harness, and the amazing work we could do if we actually came together and
yeah.
supported one another.
Hmm. It's so powerful. We are so powerful. And I think it really does start with us because
Mhm.
we're programmed, speaking of mindset, it's like we're programmed to automatically, like you said, when we see someone else with something, we think like, oh, I could never, like whether it's in a judgment place or just I could never do that because they are.
Mhm.
And so a big shift is thinking like if you see someone else achieving that, especially another woman, ask yourself, why not me? Like there's no difference between what they're doing and what you could be doing. And so that shift really, really helped propel me forward in my own journey. And it's something I
Mm.
teach my clients as well, because it allows you to use that level of like competition in a healthy way of like, this is an inspiration and motivation that I can get there too, instead of
Mhm.
putting yourself down like, oh, someone already took that spot. Like, no, it doesn't need to be that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I did that for many, 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 many years.
Same. Hmm.
I got my beginnings in a direct sale space, and it was almost like, while we were supportive, we were also in competition as well.
Hmm.
And so it's like, "Ugh, I can't do that because it's already been done." And instead of saying like, I can also do that, how can I do it in my own way?
Mm.
Um, I love this. So we've talked about the mindset shifts. How does that transition into how you help women feel more confident being naked and exploring self-love and really embracing that?
So, with that exploration of like feeling good naked, feeling good in your skin, feeling confident, not only within like your body, but every other area of your life, like it really does start from your journey within. And I had to figure that out because for decades, I was trying to get smaller and I was trying to put myself in a box, like I said. And I thought that that was the solution to being accepted and finding success and finding like happiness. And it truly wasn't, because I was muting myself. I was taking away who I was because I thought that that wasn't going to be accepted. And so taking time to look within and get to a vulnerable space of feeling good naked. Because when women, especially when you think about like vulnerability and being naked around someone else, it can be really scary. A lot of my clients will come to me and they're like, it's hard. Like, I don't even want my husband to touch my stomach or my partner to touch this specific area. And it's like these insecurities come up in that vulnerable state. And so if we can start to reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with our bodies, and break up with, you know, constantly putting ourselves down when we see ourselves in the mirror and instead
Mm,
find ways to lift ourselves up, that is the shift that will go into every other area of your life. And I had to learn that the long way, the long route,
yeah.
but now I'm helping people do that and feel good naked.
I love that. I saw a post the other day that said, little girls see themselves in their moms, and when they see their moms putting themselves down, it's like their mom's putting them down. And that just like shook me to my core because I don't speak negatively about myself for the most part. And especially don't do it in front of my daughter. But just seeing that post about that
Mhm.
and knowing that so many women do, you don't realize the little things that we might say throughout the day about ourselves that these tiny humans are paying attention to. And so the work that you're doing to help women overcome this will help break those generational cycles. And, like, that's really potent stuff, and I'm getting emotional just thinking about the gravity of, like, how much that's gonna change lives,
It's
literally.
I started my own healing journey and I went deeper with it. So, like I said, I started to help people with their mindset, but I was noticing like stuff was still coming up for me. I had shifted from, and if you're a business owner, you find our self worth in productivity. I had broken up with my self worth being around the number on the scale. And then I shifted into the self worth being the number in my bank account. And I became like a workaholic where I was just like, I was making really good money and I'd reached like the epic goals that people will tell you about, like 10K months and all this stuff. And, you know, I got to that point and I was still feeling like I wasn't happy. And I was like, wait, I was getting caught up in what people were telling me I should be doing to be happy, to feel confident, to feel good about myself, to feel worthy. And so I had to break that down again and I had to come back into myself. And I keep doing this like over and over again in a way because I think we're constantly growing. And some people can
Yeah.
see that as like, "Oh, you're going backwards," but I really think it's just, like, continued expansion. So last year,
Mm.
I talked a lot about, like, my healing journey and feeling good in your skin, and I did this feel good naked journey where I went through 30 days of getting out of my comfort zone, and you talked about this on my podcast, like, doing mirror work where I'm literally looking at myself naked and shifting my mindset around instead of picking myself apart, being able to lift myself up and whatever came up, allow it to come up without any judgment and, just reconnecting and feeling grounded within my own skin, which can be really hard because I think so much of what we do disconnects us from ourselves because we're constantly distracted in society or constantly being pulled away from that and the comparison comes up. So it's hard for us to feel good in our skin. And so I help people do that with getting more connected with yourself. And so some things that helped me do that was, you know, figuring out what makes you feel the most like yourself. When you were a kid, like what was the thing you used to do without feeling judged? Was it like skipping around to the next thing? Was it dancing to music, singing your head off? Like all those things, collecting bugs was mine. I, like, love doing stuff like that, being out in nature. So, how can we tap into that now and, like, find a way to use that as a way to connect to yourself more? So, I started doing that, and that really helped me. Um, the other thing was breaking up with negative thought patterns. So, you were kinda talking about this with how so many women, like, we just can be really negative and hard on ourselves. And, I had helped so many women with this. And so I wasn't speaking about myself out loud, but still sometimes when you're in a space where you're not taking care of your basic needs and you're struggling, I deal with depression and anxiety, like in those spaces, those thoughts can come back up. And so sometimes I could judge myself twice as hard, be like, you should know that you shouldn't be having these thoughts. And then I was feeling bad about feeling guilty and having those thoughts. And it just was that's not helping anyone. So
Right.
instead, allowing myself to be like, "Hey, why is this coming up? Let's work through this." And the same things that I was doing with my clients, I was working through myself, and it allowed me to be human, which I think is important.
Mm,
I didn't need to be this like authority figure of like, hey, you're a confidence coach. You should always be showing up super confident and put together. And I'm like, no, that's not realistic. And that's not
mm,
fair. We're put so many like unrealistic pressure in so many different other areas that I'm trying to break that up, break up that norm. We can talk more about that later with pregnancy.
yeah.
But man, I had to break that up and then also not be down on myself if things did come up. So that's a big shift that I help clients do. Um, Also focusing on what you love about yourself, because if I were to tell you right now, like we were talking about going in front of a mirror completely naked, where would your thoughts go immediately? Would you be picking yourself apart? Would you struggle if I asked you, what are three things you love about yourself? And if you couldn't come up with those three things, I don't want you to feel bad about it, but let's work on that. Let's start a little bit. Maybe ask someone who knows you really well, like, hey, what are three things you love about me? Words of affirmation is one of my love languages, and I'm okay asking for it. Like, this is
Yeah.
what I need today. I need you to tell me I'm X, Y, and Z. And like, it really does help. But then also being able to give that type of love for yourself. So doing more of that. And then when it comes to feeling good naked, like the other thing is like going naked. And so what I mean by that is getting yourself in a more vulnerable state on a regular basis. A lot of us tend to stay in our comfort zone because it's all we know, and there's so much fear in the unknown. Speaking as someone who's pregnant for the first time ever, there is so much fear in the unknown. Oh my gosh. So, being able to, instead of avoiding that discomfort, lean into it and in your own way. So, like, I would have people do different things, like literally walk around your house naked, do naked yoga. If you have
Mm.
kids, maybe spend a little more time when you turn your shower on in front of the mirror naked with your doors locked and just have a second. All of those things can help you reconnect with yourself and just allow yourself to be where you're at instead of thinking that you have to hold off on loving yourself until you reach blank goal. Because I did that for years and it is not worth it. You lose so much of your life doing that.
There's so much that I'm just absorbing right now because you just made a lot of amazing points. Like, so you just mentioned that you're pregnant, which so you're like
Yay.
22 weeks, you just said,
Yes,
right?
ma'am. 22 weeks.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
so, like you said, there's changes that are happening. And you were also talking about noticing when these thought patterns come up. So I think like the awareness, the deeper you go in, the more healing that you do, like the more growth that you have. It's like almost like sifting through the dirt and the layers. Like it's never completely healed. There's always going to be something that touches on that exact point that you feel like you've already dealt with. It's just on a deeper level. And so I love that you mentioned that because I think a lot of people get hung up on that and
Yep.
they're like, why? Why this again? And then I just want to like reframe that and be like, why this again? Okay. What are we going to go into this time? Because I've
Mm,
experienced that a lot, especially the past 3 years that I've been working with different coaches and doing different experiences and retreats and things like that. I noticed I'm like, why is that there? And I'm like, oh, okay, there's a new up level happening.
yeah.
And that's okay. So it's just the awareness of it. Why are these thought patterns there? Where did you hear these stories? Like when you do look at
Mm,
your body in the mirror and maybe the first thing that comes to mind is negative, where did you first hear that phrase? How old do you feel when
mm,
you think that or hear that? Because sometimes it is deep seated from our childhood. And then if you look at it and be like, oh, this is what some adult in my life said, was that their story? What was, we can
mhm.
really unpack that so many layers deep, but that helps us to disconnect and unweave from that story. That's not my belief. I didn't come up with that on my own. And so I think the work that you're talking about, mirror work, is so powerful
Mm.
and body appreciation. And how are you now embracing this with your pregnancy and your body changing and evolving? And can you take us through what this experience has been like for you? One thing I heard a lot over the course of my 15 years as a sexual health educator, and I spoke to thousands of women. The common thing that I would hear from them is how they just don't even care to have sex anymore. It wasn't even on their mind. They know that they need to, air quotes, need to connect with their partner, but the want, the desire, the urge just isn't there anymore. And I would look into their face and I would see the confusion, but oftentimes it was almost a look of, am I broken? It would just break my heart because I know that they had been experiencing this or feeling this for a very long time before they shared this with me. And I just want to share, ladies, you are not broken. It is something that is not talked about. And we don't realize just how much of all of our life experiences compound into whether or not we want to have sex or not. So I've created a space for women to come together, to connect, to learn, and to understand what is causing this lack of desire. It's an 8-week program where we uncover what is blocking your desire to want to have sex. So if you are wanting to reconnect to yourself, to reclaim your desire, to explore the depths of your own pleasure, then I invite you to check out Wanting to Want, where I will support you and a small group of women in unearthing what is holding you back and how to overcome that and how to start living the life that you are craving. We begin September 13th. Make sure to check out the link in the show notes. Go to intimacyevolution.com to learn more and to claim your spot. I look forward to seeing you there.
Oh man, it really hit me. And as someone who has done the work and has taken time to heal and connect with my body and help so many other people, even moms do this, to experience it. First time mom, like it is very, very different. And so I, you know, I got pregnant and I've been with my husband for a long ass time. Like we met in high school. We've been together for like uh, 16 years. We just had our 5-year anniversary. We knew we want to have kids, but it still, hit me by surprise. Cause again, I told y'all I'm very like business oriented. I dream big. I have big, big, big dreams for my life. And I had this feeling like I had to reach all of those things before I had kids. And so, yeah, so there was all this pressure when that came up. Yeah, so that comes up. And so immediately I'm just feeling this like, oh my gosh, I didn't make it. I didn't reach my goal before that point. I had a similar thing when I turned 30 where I was like, I didn't reach all my goals by 30, but starting to release the timelines was helpful for me. So I had to do that. The other thing was I allowed myself everything that I've helped my clients with when it comes to healing the relationship with their body, working through the mindset shifts. You talked about awareness. So being aware of your thoughts and coming from a place of love and grace without shame and judgment. So I was having to do that again and also not get mad at myself for having to do that again. My first trimester, y'all, they talk about morning sickness. It doesn't mean it just has to happen in the morning. It was for me. It was all the damn time to where I was like crying. I'm like, Tom, can you put me in a coma for 3 months and then bring me out of this? Because this is just rough. It was not fun. And I'm like, I don't think I could ever do this again. Like, this is hard. I was already feeling resentment towards my amazing, sweet, loving husband. I'm like, you should have to do this, not me. Like, just all of the things coming up. And so that's coming up, the emotions, the hormones, me wanting to burn my entire business to the ground. But then I was like, wait, just slow down and just like be in this moment. Like I pull like oracle cards and journaling and stuff. And like what God kept telling me was like, you just need to rest and like be in this moment and be okay with it. And the lesson that came from that experience in the first trimester was allow yourself to just be and quit wrapping your self-worth in your productivity. Cause I would constantly tell my husband, like, I feel like a piece of shit. I didn't do anything today, blah, blah, blah. I only walked and took a nap, all of these things. And I was comparing myself to the 9 to 5 amazing women that are going out there working. And I was not. I took time off my podcast. I canceled a launch. I was, taking time for myself. And so I had to meet myself where I was at. And I had to allow myself to be like, you know what, this is a chapter and it doesn't mean that it's going to last forever. And it's okay. And I had to like slow myself down in that way. And that really helped me in the beginning. Now with my body changing, that was interesting too, because it's so weird that once people know you're pregnant, it's almost like they feel like it's okay to comment on your body. It's like, "Oh, we can do that
Yeah.
now." No, that's
Yeah.
no.
Still no.
No, no. Even if you know 100,000% that I'm pregnant, you don't need to make any comments about my body. And I had some of those things
Mm.
come up where, people made comments about my body like, "Oh my gosh, thank God it came out that you told that you were pregnant now, because you're definitely starting to show." And I'm like, "Okay, like, first of all, weird, unnecessary things, just like
Yes.
crazy stuff." And but then I had to think, why does it bother me? And then the other thing is this feeling of like, do I need to cover up? Like I wear crop tops all the time. My pregnancy, like goals as far as fashion is Rihanna 1,000%. Like I love how she
Yes.
rocks her bump. But being in the in-between phase where your belly's starting to show, I've been bigger than I am now. I've been smaller than I am now. And so still struggling with like figuring out how to feel good as my body changes. And so I've done a lot more work when it comes to affirmation and speaking kindly to myself, recognizing that this is a part of the process.
Mm.
And then I also decided that I was going through this experience, taking in all the information that you get hit with, whether it's people giving you advice or you're trying to learn everything and you're reading books, which I never thought I would be that person, but I am. And you start to get overloaded with that information and you're like, but I I also don't want to lose myself in this process. I think that I was someone said something to me and I know it came out of love, but they basically were like, I wasn't living until I became a mom or I didn't truly
Mm.
feel alive or whatever it is. And it just made me feel
Yeah.
like, but I don't want my only title to be mom. I had so much
Yeah.
fear behind that. I don't know if you ever felt that personally, but I
Yeah.
definitely did. So that definitely was something I had to work through. And then I had to realize that like people are going to share things with you. And a lot of times they're projections of themselves. And so
Yeah.
telling you that like you're never going to sleep again and
Mm.
you have to go through the roommate phase, which we talked about on my podcast episode, telling you that things are going to be inevitable. And yeah, obviously life is going to change, but
Mm.
I've shifted now into this feeling of instead of not feeling ready, I'm easing into excitement and allowing myself to see motherhood as an expansion of who I am, which we were talking about, like expanding more and leaning into that. And so as I was thinking about, okay, well, I'm taking in all of this stuff about how to care for my baby and how to go through labor, but I want to keep staying connected to my body even as it changes. I don't want to
Yeah.
wait until postpartum. I know I've talked to a lot of women where 2 years go by and they're still feeling really disconnected, which is why I'm so glad that I had you on the podcast because you talked really great on this, but there's so much fear behind that. And so then I'm like, well, what can I do now? And so I've decided that I want to step into motherhood with the intention of continuing to take care of myself and prioritize my own needs. And then I'm like, well, I want to help other moms do this too. And so last year I hosted this hot girl healing series where I talked all about just like healing yourself from the inside out. And it was really, really, that was where I was doing things like mirror work and
Mhm.
different types of body work in order to reconnect with myself and just slow down and ground myself in who I am, which I'm so grateful now looking back that I did that a year ago.
Yeah.
But then I've now decided to do it again as a pregnancy edition. And it's already been really wild taking an approach to my healing journey, to connecting with my new body, to allowing the changes to come up as they do. And so that's really what I'm doing. And I'm sharing it like super vulnerably. I'm sharing the entire process throughout the 8 weeks. And it's been a lot, but I'm
Mm.
excited that I'm doing it for sure.
I love that you're bringing this up because as you were talking, I literally had the thought, I'm like, so many moms, we get wrapped up in being a mom when we're pregnant. Obviously, it's exciting.
Huh.
Love it. But you were talking about like reading the books and doing the things, and all of those are about baby,
Yeah.
how baby's growing and developing in your womb, and then how do you care for baby after, and all of these things. And I realize the importance now, hindsight, that it's important for mom, like you said, to stay connected to herself as
Mm,
she's growing. And I feel like if she were more nurtured and supported, encouraged and educated on how to do that throughout her pregnancy, what would the postpartum phase look like? How differently would it look that the mom is connected to her being and she can show up for the baby? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Being able to
Oh,
hold space for both.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that is getting talked about a little bit more now, nurturing mom after she has baby, especially during the fourth trimester, and like what are supportive womb foods that you can have during that time, and all sorts of things. But like I just love that you're intuitively doing this already, and I love that you're sharing this and just bringing more awareness to women. Can you dive more into what Hot Girl Healing looks? I know it's an 8-week program,
Yeah.
and then is this something that our listeners can like jump in on?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so basically, I wanted to take like a mind, body, soul approach throughout the entire 8 weeks. So everything's kind of taking a different focus. And so what I'll do is I'll share with you like the focus for each week of the series.
Mm.
I did it last year when I wasn't pregnant. So anyone is welcome to do it, whether you're pregnant or not. I just am going to be taking a little bit of a spin with it when it comes to pregnancy, when it comes to moms. And I've been having some really amazing guests like you coming on here throughout the process. So basically, I wanted it to be over a longer period of time because I think sometimes, like, challenges where it's like you're doing a 30-day challenge or something can be a little overwhelming to try and
Mhm.
do something daily. So instead, it's just every week is a focus, and ideally, they're building on top of itself. So week 1 is all about meditation. And so if you've never meditated before, I talk about just getting into just 5 minutes a day where you're just slowing down, turning the screens off, and breathing. But then I also am sharing about my own experience with sound bath meditation, where they're using sound frequency and you're going through a meditative state. It's amazing. I did it when I wasn't pregnant, and now I recently have done it while pregnant. And it's just so crazy
Mm.
because like your baby's literally in water. So
Yeah,
it's definitely going to
and
make
all of that.
it's going to be such an impact with everything. So that was a really cool connection that I got to experience with myself previously, and now with myself and my baby. Like that was so cool for me. But continuing to do that, I recorded a guided meditation to help release fear and anxiety, which can help anyone as someone who has dealt with that. And then I also recorded pregnancy affirmations. So we were talking about that experience of our bodies changing and working through all of these changes that are happening. And so I went through and thought about what are some things that I need to hear right now and need to repeat to myself. And so I went through and did like a 5 to 7 minute affirmation episode where I'm just going through all of those. And so whether you're a mom or you're currently pregnant, I definitely would recommend that as well. And so this is all through my podcast, so anyone can listen to it. The next week is all about body work. Last year, I did like chiropractics and was just learning about different things that are not necessarily just going to the doctor to get medication when you're trying to work on yourself. And so now I'm learning more about acupressure and even acupuncture while pregnant. So we're going to like just explore new things there. I am not an expert in any of those. So I'm just kind of taking an explorative approach to all of this. Week 3 is all about self expression. I kind of talked about this earlier on the episode. What are things that you used to love doing as a kid? Like, how do you express yourself? You spoke a lot about this on postpartum relationship and intimacy, and when it came to expressing yourself and connecting with yourself. So, we're going to be highlighting you for that week as well. But then I'm just going to try different things that are not focused on having to be productive. It's really just like, how
Mm.
do I want to tap into that? Whether it's like dancing around your kitchen, just some form of self expression every single day. Week 4 is all about biohacking. So last year we talked about just ways to connect with your body and find more independence and autonomy with adjusting your breath and even adjusting your blood pressure, different things like breath work. If you guys haven't done like a cold plunge, they're amazing. I do it with my face. If you don't want to do your whole body, you can do like
Yeah,
with your face in the ice bucket, basically
yeah.
putting your face through, tapping, any kind of like parasympathetic nerve stimulation to help like lower our stress levels. Cause so many of
Mm,
us are living in fight or flight, especially if you're anxious about being pregnant.
yeah.
And so I'm taking that and doing like biohacking pregnancy. So I'm working with a doula. I've hired her and she talks a lot about ways to help lower the stress and be in a calm state, especially through labor. So we're going to be practicing that. Yeah, I'm sure you know more about that than me.
Oh, yeah.
So it's gonna be crazy, but that's week 4. Week 5, we're getting into just holistic healing practices. So there's things that I did last year, like understanding dry brushing and using gua
Mm,
sha and lymphatic drainage and all of that fun stuff. But then also bringing on someone to talk more about traditional Chinese medicine because sometimes we're fed that like there's only one way to something, especially when it comes to birth and pregnancy and that
Mhm.
kind of the medical side. My husband's in the medical field, so, like, I'm trying to bring both worlds together and find a little bit of
Yeah.
harmony there, and so that's why I really wanna bring on an expert there. Week 6 is all about embodiment, so if you've ever
Mm,
done visualization before or wanting to, you kinda talked about this with confidence, like, you know, confidence doesn't show up until you do. And so this idea of embodying like the most confident version of yourself. And so with me, like last year I did that and I just started, going to the places and doing the things, dressing the way that I felt like my most
mm,
confident self would. And it really helped, me skyrocket towards believing that and stepping into this new level. I think it's why I'm here today, but now I'm doing it again as a mom. How can I embody that version of how I want to show up as a mom and how I want to show up in my business and my life and all these different areas with harmony. And so that's going to be a really fun one. Week 7 is all about hypnosis. I don't know if you've ever done like self
I haven't.
hypnosis. Oh man. Okay. So it changed my life, like absolutely changed my life. I had done guided hypnosis through YouTube and stuff, but I actually got a hypnotherapist and she was amazing and took me through a lot of stuff that I didn't realize I was still holding on to. It was really, really wild experience, but then I started learning this year about hypnobirthing, and so the concept of taking, like, hypnosis, but into the labor room, into birthing and delivery, and so that's something I'm gonna be doing, which is fun.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, so it's gonna be wild, so I'm gonna have my hypnotherapist, Melanie, talk about it, but again, like, if you're not doing and, like, gonna be going through pregnancy, you can still benefit from understanding hypnotherapy in general, but
Yeah.
hypnobirthing is gonna be, like, the spin that I take on it, and
I
then
love
finally
it.
yeah, it's gonna be crazy, and then finally, energy work is the last week where with this one, it's really just forms of grounding and understanding the flow of energy, so things like yoga, a lot of people have done that before, tai chi, grounding exercises, Reiki is one that I did last year, float tank therapy. If you guys haven't done like uh, it's basically a deprivation tank where you don't have any light, sound, and the water is the same temperature as your skin, and it's so salty that, like, you float. And so I did it last year, and it was really, really great. I loved it. Pregnant women love it, and so I've done it once since being pregnant, but it's, like, the only time you actually feel weightless. So, like, you're actually lifted up and you don't have that back pain, so definitely gonna be doing a lot of that. But yeah, so basically the whole experience is for me to get back to that point like I was last year where I was focused on my healing and realizing that like me doing that for myself is also going to help my baby and help my future with this kid. And so I'm working through the mindset stuff of that, but it's been something that I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just love all that so much. Yeah, I've never done, a deprivation tank, but I do remember being pregnant with our first because I was at the peak of pregnancy during the summer. He's born in September.
Oof,
And I
fun.
just remembered I loved being like, we went to the lake, like being in
Love.
water just felt so good. So
Mhm.
I can only imagine how that would feel.
Yes.
So that's awesome. That is a very comprehensive, like there's so much packed into there, but like you said, you spread it out over 8 weeks so it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's digestible,
Mhm.
but it's so impactful. There's a lot of information there. I'm definitely checking it out myself.
Yeah.
I listened to your podcast where you talked about it. I'm like, I need to do this. Like, this
Oh
is
my
just
gosh. Yes.
such
Do it
great
with me.
information. This has been amazing. I have another question that just came to me.
Yeah.
How has growing your confidence in yourself, your body, your being, how has that impacted your relationship? Because you've gone through this journey. You've been together for 16 years. So you've experienced all of this in relationship. So how has that impacted you?
Oof. Yes. Okay. We are not the same people when we first met, which is wild. It's like you keep finding a way back to each other in such a beautiful way. And like
Mhm.
it allows for us to continue to grow. We were long distance for a while. And so being able to do that when we first got together, I very much found my validation through him,
Mm,
found all of my affirmations through him, my self worth through him. So I needed that. And it put a lot of pressure on him because your partner doesn't need to be your everything for you, nor should they. And so that put a lot of pressure on a relationship. And then it also made it to where I wasn't giving myself that kind of love. And it made it to where even when he was affirming me, making me feel good, saying things like, "You're so beautiful," or "I love you so much," I wasn't really accepting them because I wasn't truly accepting myself, even in that relationship. I wasn't loving myself. I felt like I wasn't enough. I didn't deserve that type of unconditional love, that my love was only based on what I was bringing to the table.
Mhm.
And that was really hard for me. We stayed together our entire time, but I had to take time for myself and look within, like, how can I show myself love? And how can I find myself, my own inner beauty, my own outer beauty? And it took a lot of breaking down, why did I have these judgments and feelings and negativity towards myself? You talked about, like, asking ourselves, where did this come from? How did it come up? And a lot of it was projection of the pain that my mom had gone through and my grandmother, and just all of those things get passed down and we carry that with us. One of the wildest things about being pregnant is the fact that, like, if I have a girl, which we're waiting to be surprised, if I have a girl right now, not only is that like future generation that's inside me, but she already has her possible future generation if she chooses to have kids inside of her. And that is just multi-generational. We are all connected, and I think it's something to remember. And so I had to work through that. But as I did, it absolutely changed our relationship because I was no longer going to him for my everything. Instead, I was able to come to him fully confident in who I was and able to love, like, hey, like, this is who I am. I don't feel bad about it. And then being able to fully show up as myself because I was able to figure out who the fuck I am. And then having your partner fully embrace that is the best intimacy ever because you are
Mm.
so much more connected with yourself. And it makes you so much more connected with your partner. And it was a lot of growing pains that we both had to go through, but like, it was so worth it in the end because now we are like, it's a different level. It's something that I couldn't even explain to old Jago from, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Our lives is in relationship aspect parallel so
Really?
much. Yeah. So, because Mark and I have been together for 16 years. So we met in college. I know you guys met in high school, but we also did long distance for 2 years. And I love what you said about how you keep finding your way back to each other.
Mm,
And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is that, that's why our podcast is Intimacy Evolution because it evolves over time. And I hear a lot of times they'll be like, well, they're not the person that I married. And I'm like, I hope not.
nor should they
I
be.
hope, yeah, that you are both growing. If one of you is not growing, then that is going to cause friction. But I love the way you said that about how you keep finding your way back to each other because you keep growing together, but
Mhm.
separately at the same time. And that's what is
Exactly.
interdependence. Like you can both and we can be separate and a unit. And I love that so much. And then I really resonated when you said that you couldn't accept his affection and
Mhm,
words of affirmation to you because you weren't accepting of yourself. God, that hit me in
mhm.
my core because I also felt that for a long time because of generational,
Mhm.
ties and things like that. And so just a lot of reflections in your
Ugh.
share. I'm like, I could have said that, like literally.
I mean, it's such a common story because
Mhm.
as women, we come back to like thinking about the end destination or like the goals that we're supposed to check off. Like, okay,
Yeah.
you find your person, you get married, you do the things, but in the fairy tales, that's where it ends is like the wedding, but like that is
Yeah.
just the beginning of your life.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really easy for us to romanticize relationships and put all this pressure on like, oh, well, if he wanted to, he would, is something I see a lot around people
Uh-huh.
saying that. And the thing is we're all going through our human experience for the first time. We're all figuring this out together. And it's not about if he wanted to, he would. It's about let's communicate on what that can look like. And it goes on
Mm.
both sides. And like us doing that more and more has helped us so much. Like we're not the same people. We love each other so differently than we
Yeah.
used to because before we were giving us each other love and like how we wanted to receive it and not in the way that the other person really resonated with. And having to figure that out takes time and it's not always comfortable and it can
Mm.
feel really scary. Like speaking of feeling good naked, like you're super naked and vulnerable when you're sharing, like, hey, this is what really, really hurts me. This is what was my most vulnerable state. This is
Yeah.
where I feel I'm not enough. And explaining that to someone who maybe doesn't fully understand that, especially with me as a woman going through a lot of that. My husband didn't necessarily get all that. He grew up with a brother, he didn't grow up
Yeah.
around sisters. So I don't know, just allowing space to get to know yourself and then allowing space to get to know your partner and coming from a place of love, as long as you're grounded and rooted in like those same values, I really think that that's what kept us going and kept us continuing to, like I
Mm.
said, like keep coming back and falling in love with the new version of ourselves as we
Yeah.
continue to evolve.
And it does take work. It's not this old phrase, true love is easy. Like, no, like relationships take work.
Yeah,
And
real love is hard.
yeah, it is because you are showing up vulnerable and it gets messy and there's just so much, but it's so beautiful
Yeah.
to go through that together too.
Mm.
And oh, I have loved every single bit of this
This has been
conversation
great.
today. We have covered so much. You have just shared amazing wisdom with me, with our listeners, and I am just so grateful for you being on today and appreciate the work that you're doing and the experiences you had to go through to receive that wisdom to share. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
great.
Yeah. So please, if there's anything last minute things that are on your heart that you want to share or let our listeners know where they can find you.
I mean, I just want everyone to continue to love on yourselves and come at this journey with grace and love. And any way that I can help you, feel free to shoot me. Like I slid in Bree's DMs. Feel free to slide in my DMs.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as where I'm hanging out, I think I'm the most raw and vulnerable on my podcast. Like I don't hold back there because if you're there for the long haul. We're a part of this together. I'm so confidently and comfortable with Jago. Like that's the podcast. I hang out on Instagram and TikTok, Jago Fit Life and XO Jago. I'll send you the links for that. And then I help people tap into this when it comes to coaching on feeling confident in your skin, working through showing up as your highest self, not only in relationships, but with yourself, with your partner, also just with career. If you're an entrepreneur, like I just take a lot of those different aspects because I truly believe that mindset and confidence, it seeps into every other area of our life. So I really, really am passionate about helping people get reconnected with themselves in order to thrive and show up as their most confident self as they can.
That was beautiful. So thank you, Jago,
Thank you.
so much for being on our show today. And we will see you all next week.